speakers have drawn their order. Stephen Morgan will speak first. Jonathan Dunn is second. Charlie Bombalier is third. For this contest, all contestants must have completed at least 6 manual speeches in the Communication and Leadership Program manual prior to the club contest. Contestants will speak from the same speaking area, and again, all of the functionaries and judges have been briefed. For this contest, the contestants may remain in the room throughout the duration of the contest. Contestants have prepared their own speeches. They must be substantially original and certified as such in writing to the chief judge. I will be introducing each contestant by announcing the contestant's name, the title of their speech, repeat the title of the speech, and repeat their name. There will be 1 minute of silence between contestants, during which the judges mark their ballots. After the last contestant, there will be 2 minutes of silence, after which the vote counters will collect the ballots. For this contest, the timing for the speeches is that they have 5 to 7 minutes from their speech. They will be disqualified if they are 30 minutes short of the 5 minutes. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Don't get speech in 30 minutes.
Call the babysitter, you ain't leaving. Okay, I made a joke. If they are 30 seconds after the more than 30 minutes after the 7 minutes, more than 30, okay, there's a, 5 to 7 minutes, 30 seconds. I'm done here. Three times. Where I wrote down the speeches.
We got your back.
You got my back. Okay, I wrote this down 3 times. Where are you? Well, let's see. I got it. Yeah, we're. Okay, Stephen's ready, so he's the first contestant. Let me go back. Okay, here it is. Come to the front seat. Oh yeah, they've had a minute. Stephen Morgan. Shine. Shine. Stephen Morgan.
Whoa! Who is this? This day is unresponsive! Kelly'sville 911! Stop! I'm on my way. From the back seat, my 10-year-old son Richard pipes up. Dad? Who's that? It's David's roommate Liz. Something's wrong with him. I'm going over there as soon as I drop you off at school. I drove over, dreading what I would find. And what I saw was the ambulance leaving slow and silent. The brightest light shining through my darkest night had been extinguished. Alone, in the middle of the night, at the age of 33. David, this is for you. A room full of Toastmasters who have to sit and listen politely for 5 to 7 minutes. I know you love that. It shined through in your humorous contest speech about your prosthetic leg. Oh, the puns. You had 2 left feet to cost you an arm and a leg. How you give your left leg for a better parking space. I loved how you compared it to a pet, taking it for walks, sleeping with it, always finding it underfoot. But the best was how you illuminated the government's ineptitude. By reading the letter rejecting your disability claim because your condition was only temporary. It was summer 2011. You emailed Safe Words Toastmasters and told us you were going to miss the meeting because you were in the hospital. You didn't have anyone to help you, and I believe no one should be that alone. So I brought my family in to visit. And there we discovered a shared passion for board games, especially Settlers of Catan, which of course I won. But David, you got a thrill from finding someone who could beat you. And so we would play game after game, day after day, and you would come oh so close and fall short. Till months later, the moment finally arrived. You beat me, and you jumped up hollering and cheering and gloating. David, it's a good thing we had far more in common than our dominant competitive natures. We shared the same philosophies, strange as they were, on life and relationships. We had shared passions for hypnosis, for comic books, for science fiction, for role-playing games, for pretty much anything nerdy. How nerdy, I think you put it best when the movie Iron Man 2 came out. You posted online, I would drive a steamroller through a field of babies to get to that movie. And that reminds me of the day we did the Avengers movie marathon at AMC. One day, 6 movies back to back, 14 hours straight. By the end, my butt was numb. I was jacked up with popcorn and Dr. Pepper. We had a blast. And our kids were so jealous. Our children adored you, David. You could see that in their shining faces. They loved playing Dungeons & Dragons with you so much, they knew you better by your alternate persona, Shadow Dragon. When they arrived for the summer, all we heard was, when is Shadow coming? When is Shadow coming? Until my wife Susan finally blurted, did you come to see Shadow or did you come to see Mommy? David, you shine brightest when my life and family came apart at the seams. When you couldn't hold us together, you held us separately. You were the one who warned me that those who had promised to help me were the ones trying to destroy me. You had known such vile betrayal before. You made sure I was not alone. That is the greatest kindness anyone has ever done for me. You once told me that this statement hit you hard. You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. By that measure, David, you had more character in your left foot than any 10 people here. See, I was there when you met Kelly, as she was being thrown out on the street, unemployed and penniless. Though you yourself were destitute, buried in debt, and witnessed my debacle, you took her in. You fed her, you gave her a place to sleep, you got her a job. And yet that morning, try as she might, Kelly could do nothing for her. I can hear you saying, I'm sorry. But then I hear you give the very retort you gave oh so often. You are not sorry, you are awesome. David, it is because you are awesome that we hurt. It is because you're awesome that you shine so bright. It's because you're awesome that our lives are better for having known you. For all the late nights and long talks. For all the games won and lost. For all the good times. And especially that. David, I love you. I miss you. And I thank you. picked Richard up that afternoon, first thing he says is, "I'm a shadow." So I had to choke up and get out. Shadow's dead. When I got home, I held my son for a long time as we were both crying. And I said to him, "Just please, always remember, I love you." He answered, "I will."
One minute on the timers for the judges to complete their ballots. Thank you, Tony. Jonathan Dunn, give up the fake. Give up the fake. Jonathan Dunn.
I bet if I were to ask you what you were doing when you were 10 years old, we all would hear some really funny responses. Take me, for instance. When I was 10 years old, I was sitting inside of my very first James Bond movie, Octopussy. And I could not take my eyes off of that screen. It was as if I had just found my own personal holy grail. It was time for me to become a secret agent. Because if I could become a secret agent like James Bond, certainly I would quit getting stuck in porta potties that had been used and having them tipped over by the bigger boys and having to run home and lie to my parents about why I was covered in human excrement. And maybe I could develop some self-esteem of my own. If I could become a secret agent like James Bond, maybe, just maybe, in the daily kickball classes, I would quit getting picked last after the girls. And maybe I could experience some community and actually want to go to school. But most importantly, if I could develop secret agent skills like James Bond when I was navigating my way through the hallways at school, I could probably do a far better job of avoiding the bully who always had his 3-ring binder ready for me with groups of girls and fellow students as he beat me over the head with it until I was bloody, yelling, "Don't I know you from Vietnam?" And maybe some of those fellow students would actually love me. So I became a secret agent. armed with the secret agent watch that my parents purchased for me at the TG&Y. I use the term watch very loosely, of course, because it didn't actually tell time. It had a sticker for a faceplate. But what it did do was it launched little red projectiles out of the side. And since I didn't want my bigger brother or bigger sister to beat me up like the kids at school, the recipient of all my practice was my mother, Linda. And the practice usually involved me standing behind a bookcase, and when she would walk by, I would jump out and I would shoot her with a little red projectile. And usually, she would reply like this: "Son, you're going to give your poor mother a coronary, and if you do that, who's going to cook your frozen pizzas for you after school?" I was like, crap, she's right. But worse than that, the more I practiced, the more things stayed exactly the same at school. In fact, they got quite worse. My parents actually were truly concerned about the coronary. They hatched a plan. Let's get John's fake watch off his wrist and let's teach him a life lesson. It's time for our son to receive a life lesson. My father came into my room one night and he said, "Son, give me that watch." And since I was currently getting beat up at school still every day, it wasn't a hard exchange. I put it in his hand, and on my wrist, he put this watch. A liquid crystal display watch that actually told time. I was so focused in on having something shiny on my wrist, guess what? Something we're all familiar with. I didn't hear a word he said. Because this watch was my pain relief. I had something new. And for once, I wasn't thinking about the horrors at school. And for the next 30 years of my life, guess what it looked like? I achieved very high levels of materialistic prosperity, homes in a gated community, cars. But when the lights were off at night, all I wanted was community. I wanted to love myself, and I wanted to have some self-esteem. And wouldn't you know it, a monkey in Washington, D.C. showed me the error of my ways. As I was looking at the majesty of the monkeys, I thought to myself, gosh, sure would be nice to live your life without walls in Africa. And I stepped back and I thought, my God, I've lived my whole life that way. Staying away from fear and trying to get things. And I thought, it's time to drop my ego once and for all. There's got to be a better way. And I ended up in Mass with my parents. The pastor steps out. He begins to share a story about a little girl who won a fake string of pearls at a church carnival. And when she wore those pearls, she felt beautiful. And her parents knew that this was not the way they wanted their daughter to lead her life. Go back 30 years. I was more focused on this than the James Bond. Her parents hatched a plan to rid her of the fake pearls. Father went into her room one night and said, "Give me those pearls." And the little girl said, "No, I don't want to give you the pearls, Daddy." And he persisted. And she forfeited the pearls to him. Tears just streaming down her face. Her father pulled a string of organic cultured pearls out of his pocket, strapped them around her neck, bent over, put his hands on her shoulder, kissed her on her forehead, and shared with her what my father tried to share with me 30 years earlier. Fellow Toastmasters, most distinguished guests, what fake things are you holding on to? Give them up and let the real saturate you. Adam Contest Master.
One minute on the clock. Could our Next contestant, please come to the front. Thank you. Charlie Bombalier. Sounds of silence. Sounds of silence. Charlie Bombalier.
Can you hear it? Listen closely. Can you hear that little boy whimpering, "May I have a glass of water, please?" Slap, slap, slap! How many times must I tell you to call me sir? Slap, slap, slap! The little boy falls to the floor from the vicious blows, knowing only that a new face-slapping session was beginning. Madam Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters and guests. He is yanked by his hair from the floor, ordered to strip. The command to kneel is given. Although he knows that there's no way he can win this battle, he still tries to resist. Slap, slap, slap! And continues, until finally a vicious double slap to his face drops him to his knees. A while later, he is pulled once again by his hair, dragged to the closet that awaits him with only a bucket and a roll of toilet paper to keep him company. He tries to see the little bit of light left under the door. Before that too is sealed, leaving him in such darkness that he can't see his hand in front of his face. 20 minutes goes by, but time has stopped with this little boy. His own heartbeat terrifies him. His breathing becomes a roar. His prayers unanswered. His will broken. He crawls into a corner and in a fetal position starts the endless flow of tears. This little boy was not kidnapped. Fate dropped him into the hands of his uncle, a sadistic, pedophile priest. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This time, he spared the pains of the leather strap upon his barren skin. Other times, he's punished by having to stand in a corner for endless hours naked, with his hands behind his head. His mouth washed out with lye soap if he said a word that wasn't deemed correct. Humiliated by his priest friends that found it amusing to see a child being mistreated. This boy's name was Carlos. He endured this type of punishments and abuse from age 7 to 14, until finally one of his aunts was able to rescue him. This goes on every day in Florida, in the rest of this nation. Child abuse is rampant. When he's put in that closet, all he can think of is the demons that are bringing him into some evil thoughts. Thoughts of killing, thoughts of committing suicide, thoughts of not knowing what to do, just plain scared. The boy was 8 years old when this happened. He was lucky that time. But other times, he stayed in that closet for hours, bleeding, thirsty, hungry. No surprise that he had some thoughts of suicide many times. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a true story. The boy's name was Carlos. He's given me permission to share this with you in public. Why? Awareness of child abuse. Child abuse is rampant in this country. Over 6 million children are reported abused each year, and that's not including the religious and private boarding schools. These private and religious boarding schools have now reached over $1 billion in profit and growing. In essence, many of these schools are not licensed or regulated. Abuse is rampant in these places. Why have I chosen to tell you this story? What is abuse? What are the consequences of abuse? Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, suicide, mental anguish, and becoming an abuser themselves. How do we stop this? It is the responsibility of each individual in this country. Your responsibility, my responsibility, to be vigilant about child abuse. Do you think that because of this child abuse, that they cannot become functioning adults? Not so. I have chosen this speech to give you because, remember Carlos? He changed his name to Charlie Bombalier, Madam Toastmaster.